بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So in the book Greater Sins, we were talking about Tawriya, which we said means to say something, but it can be interpreted in a different type of way. So you mean one thing, but the person who's listening to you, they get something else from you. So it's not saying a lie. You're saying something, but you intend one thing and they take a different meaning from that. We said, for example, someone is in this place and they moved from one place to another, and they said they're searching for a Muslim, like the bad people. They say, "Have you seen him?" And you say, "I haven't seen him since I've been standing here." So you meant that you're standing here in this place, but you saw him when you were in the other place, but you moved a few steps, and you say, "I haven't seen him since I've been here." You're saying like in this spot. But what they get from it is that you haven't seen him at all while you were outside. So you meant one thing, they meant something else. And this is what is meant by this. We said that there is some types of this which is actually commanded. The first type is when we said that if there's a risk of harm. The second type, we said that when a person intends to harm or insult someone else, then you can do that. Third type is if tawriya is when there's not a purpose behind it, and no one wishes to cause anyone harm, then this type we should not do. Some consider it haram. Some say that it is permissible, but according to ihtiyat or precaution, we should refrain from that if we have no legit reason to do that. Now we reach the part when there are some cases where lying is permitted, and sometimes it can even be wajib to tell a lie, be mandatory. He says, whenever there is danger to life, honor, or property, and if the danger can be avoided by lying, one is allowed to lie. The danger could be to one's own life, honor, and property, or that of someone else. For example, when we saw that Ammar Yasser, when they killed his parents, then they told him, you have to confess to this idol, to believe in this idol, and denounce the Prophet and denounce Islam. And he did so, but he told them what they wanted to hear, so they would let him live. And that is more important. The value of life is more important than the sin of lying. To save one's life, it is more important. And sometimes when we are in the situation where we can save one's life, then certain things become obligatory that may have been haram before in order to save our life. For example, we are in the desert starving, and we have no way to, nothing to eat. And the only thing to eat is haram food, for example, pork or wine or something like this. And if you don't consume that thing, then you will die. And there's no other option. Then the value of your life is more important, and that does not count against the person for the sin that they partake just enough to keep their life alive. The same here when it's telling a lie, we see that it is permitted in the case someone's life is in danger. Then we should do that. We actually have to save the life. He says it is wajib to save oneself by lying and taking a false oath. For example, if an oppressor wishes to kill a Muslim or wants to beat him up or dishonor him, to take his property, to lock him up, and he asks you where he is, it's obligatory not to tell the truth. So it's obligatory to tell the lie or to take a false oath in order to save the life of a fellow Muslim or to save a Muslim from harm. If there is another way you can do it, then it is better. But in the case that that is the only way, then this is permitted. And he says, the next part, false oath, we left here. There are many traditions that support the taking of a false oath in order to save the Muslims. For example, Sheikh al-Ansari in his book Maqasid quotes Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Imam Ali alayhi salam that they have narrated the following tradition from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, that he said, swear falsely by Allah, but save your Muslim brothers from unjust murder. So we can swear even falsely by Allah's name if you're doing it with the intention of saving your fellow Muslim from being murdered. Another narration, he says that he had one of the companions asked Imam Rida alayhi salam about the person who takes a false oath in order to save his property from an unjust ruler. Imam Rida alayhi salam said there is no harm in that. He was again asked if a man takes a false oath to save the property of his fellow believing Muslim brother, just as he had sworn falsely to save his own. So is it only for our own or is it for other people? He said, is it allowed or not? So the Imam said, yes, it's allowed. So we have textual proof that this is permissible. Also, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, if one is compelled to take a false oath to save the life of a Muslim or to save the property from an oppressor or a thief, not only is the expiation of this false oath not payable, but he would rather be eligible for divine rewards. So most of the time when we violate an oath, there's some kafara for that oath, some expiation. For example, we have the choice between feeding 10 needy people or clothing 10 needy people, or if one cannot do that, then they should fast for 3 days if all the conditions of the oath are met. And inshallah, in the probably the next chapter of this book will bring those conditions of oath and talk about that. But he says that normally, we have to do kafara, but in this case, there's no kafara. Even he will get thawab for telling this making this false oath, because he did it with an intention to save the life or the property of a fellow Muslim, and this is honorable deed, this is a good action, so he will get thawab. There's no kafara, there is no sin on breaking oath, because the oath was in order to save the life of someone else or the property of someone else. He said 2 points need to be mentioned and remembered here. One is that even though it's permitted to lie to save oneself from some monetary loss, he said it is mustahab, recommended not to lie if one is capable of bearing the loss. Imam Ali alayhi salam said the sign of belief is that one speaks the truth even if it causes loss, and refrains from a lie even if it is beneficial to lie. So, for example, if this loss will, you cannot bear the loss, meaning that it will financially cripple you, you could lose your house, you will not be able to feed your family, it will have a big impact against you and you cannot bear that loss, then yes, it's permitted to do that. But in the case that you can bear the loss and it's something, maybe, for example, it's something small, it's something for a loss, a monetary loss, let's say of $100, but this $100 is not going to hurt you. And then he said that it's mustahab, it's recommended not to lie, and if you can bear the loss. So this is only in those compelling matters that are very serious, where if you don't lie, then you could lose everything you have or means of survival and all these type of things. He said if one is compelled, he must limit himself to tawriyah if he can. Another point is that he said the situations where the mujtahideen have permitted tawriyah, it is best not to use falsehood, but to limit themselves to this only. If you can find a way not to tell the lie, but you can use this method where we mentioned that you say something, but the listener gets a different meaning from that, where they will leave you alone, or they will go on their way or something else. He says, to reconcile two believing people by using falsehood. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said speech is of three types: truth, falsehood, and reconciling people. So someone asked, what is reconciling people? Imam says, you hear someone speaking ill about somebody, but you tell the other person that the former was saying good things about you. You don't want to tell the other person, the bad things someone else was doing and what they were saying. So instead, you say, because that will cause more hatred from the other side, and they will cause more problems for them. And this is a fault that that believer had. And inshallah, they get past that thing. We should pray for both of them to reconcile and to sort themselves out and make peace. But when the other person says, oh, what was he saying about me? I know he's saying something about me. You just say, oh, no, it's permitted to say that, oh, he was saying good about you. Or you can, just not mention it. There's different ways about doing that. But it is permissible to do that in order to reconcile the other people. He said, in conveying a message of ill will. In fact, one is ordered to resort to doing so, one can bring about reconciliation between two people. One who brings about such reconciliation shall not be termed as a liar, because if the message of ill will is communicated from one to the other, it will only increase enmity between the two. So, in the same way, if a husband and wife have separated and divorce is about to happen, one is allowed to speak a lie if it can bring about a reunion. For example, the husband could be told, your wife is very much troubled by the separation. She has such intense feelings for you that she might become sick, or the wife may be told similar things so that they may reunite. So someone tells the husband, maybe the wife is, she is mad at him, but she is, not to that point, that she is becoming sick and she is sad that she is not with him. But you tell the husband ask you, have you seen my wife? How is she? And the person wants to bring them back together. So he said, she is not doing very good. She is taking this very hard. She's crying a lot and she's very sick because of this. And then maybe that will make the husband feel sorry for whatever he did, and he can go and apologize and then reconcile things and make things right. So this is permitted to do in this type of case. He says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, after the fulfillment of the wajib acts, the best action is to bring about peace and reconciliation among the people. This is such an act that spreads goodness in the world. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi has said at the time of writing his last will, Ya Ali, Allah even likes a falsehood for the sake of peace and dislikes a truth that spreads corruption. So we see that Allah loves the falsehood for the sake of peace, like in the example I mentioned about the reconciling the people who are about to get divorced. She may not have been crying over what he had done and not sick, maybe, but when the person told him that, he felt sorry for her, putting her in that position. He felt bad about it. He had remorse, he had regret, and he said, I need to go make these things right. And he went and fixed it. So this is as the Prophet said, Allah even likes a falsehood for the sake of peace, and dislikes a truth that spreads corruption. Maybe someone says something that is true about someone else, but the other person, if you tell them that, it's going to make a big problem. And maybe that when you tell that person, such and such said this about you, it's true, he did say that. But when you tell the other person, that person gets so angry that he goes and he beats the other one up, or even worse, could kill that person. You told the truth, but it caused corruption. So he says that Allah dislikes the truth that spreads corruption. So we have to take these things into account. Also, it's narrated Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to make peace among people and to think about reconciling people and removing discord is better than prayers and fasting. So this is the importance we see, that to bring people together. And we should try to do that as much as we can. We should remove those grudges that we have and try to clear that from our heart, because sometimes people, they go 10, 20, 30 years being angry at each other, but they don't even know why they're angry at each other. They've been mad so long. And unfortunately, they let those grudges tear apart communities and all of these things. And it's over something silly for the most part. There's a good dua that I've been saying this dua since I was a teenager, probably, but I recommend it to everyone if they can learn it. It's in Quran, Surah 59, Ayat 10. It says, رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. صدق الله العلي العظيم. We say that, "O Allah, forgive for us and for our brothers who passed away before us, and do not make any ill will in our heart for those who believe. Our Lord, you are the most compassionate and the most merciful." So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take that ill will, those bad feelings for other people who believe, to take it away from us, take it out of our hearts. And we should always want to reconcile and make peace with people. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you try to make peace with someone, but they never let their other side, they'll never let it go. They always want to bring that thing that happened up, and they want to make problems, and they don't want peace, no matter how many times you've tried. I've been in that situation. The only thing you can do at that point is you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they soften their heart toward you, and you say that you have tried, you have done everything that you can, and that you don't hold any hard feelings toward that person. And they can hold hard feelings if they want to, but like they said they say the saying to it takes two hands to clap, to make noise. It takes two hands to clap. You cannot clap with one hand. So you just remove yourself from that situation. You don't hold any hard feelings, and just inshallah, they get over it. You've done everything you can. The next narration, it says there was an inheritance dispute between this person and between my son-in-law and me. Our dispute was in process when the agent of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Mufaddal, he happened to pass by. He stopped to listen for a while, then he went back to his house. He gave us 400 dirhams and solved the dispute. Then he said, "The money I gave you wasn't mine. It belonged to my master, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He ordered me to solve the disputes among his followers through his money." So it showed that the Imam dedicated money for this type of purpose, to make peace, make reconciliation. And we saw that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this action is better than prayers and fasting. It says, even though it's a mustahab action, whereas the former are wajib. So prayers and fasting are wajib, but making peace between people is mustahab. But the mustahab action in this case has more thawab than the wajib action. He said the author said the reason for this could be that due to prayers and fasting is an individual is reformed. So it just works on yourself. But the person who makes peace with people, they reform the whole society, and consequently prayers and fasting also become popular among people. Unity among the Muslims is not only beneficial for the hereafter, it's very much needed from the worldly point of view also. When the hearts of the believers unite for the sake of Allah, such a power is achieved that not only the apparent enemies can be faced, but even the hidden enemies, meaning one's nafs, and also shaitan, could be repelled easier. So we have to unite amongst each other, put away petty differences of whatever the nature of those are, petty disputes or even big disputes. They need to be solved. Communities need to stick together, not fight over small things. I remember I've been some places and they are fighting over the food. This food, our culture says the men eat first. The other group says our culture says the ladies eat first. This one, okay, they only bring spicy food, and we don't want spicy food. We want a different type of food. Like I've seen these type of things, and they came to me and said, we feel it's insulting for our ladies to eat last, but the people who run center want the men to eat first, and we want to start our own center. Come on, like just for a few people, for this type of reason, they need to sort it out and work it out together. It's not a reason to disunite and start a whole new center over this issue. Something can be worked out with that. Maybe some days the men eat first, some days the lady eat first. They could just alternate. There's a lot of remedies, but sometimes we let something small escalate into something big, and then we don't talk about it, and then it even makes it even bigger. So we have to make sure that we unite on these on things and don't disunite. A lot of times I've seen centers, they let the Maraja disunite them, meaning that they have differences amongst themselves, the Muqalladeen, the followers of the Maraja, not the Maraja themselves, but the followers. And they say, I don't like, my marja is the best marja, and you have to, and anyone who doesn't follow my marja, they need to go somewhere else, and I'm not doing anything with them, and all of these type of things. Centers won't come and do programs together or joint Eid prayers together because that center follows such and such marja, and our center follows this marja, and the other center follows this one. The parents don't let the youth interact with each other because they follow different maraja, and all of these things. This is something that we shouldn't do. We're all under the banner of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And yes, maybe there's some ikhtilaf, some small differences in their rulings or something like this, but this shouldn't be a cause to disunite amongst ourselves. We need to look at the bigger picture and not turn these, I've seen these type of things. They remind me of gangs a lot of time, like the Maraja wars, oh, I follow this one, which one you follow, and oh, I follow this one, and then oh, I got a problem with you, and you got a problem with me, and I think it's very silly that we have a lot of bigger things to worry about, but people worry about this type of thing. I can work with anyone. We're all follower of Ahlul Bayt. We should all look at that and work together with that, and don't let the political things or politics get in the way of what we're trying to do. We all should work together. And that's how I feel. And I don't like when people try to, they say, oh, you're with this group, or you're with that group, or I can't work with you because you do that, or you can't work with them because they do this. We shouldn't do that. We should just unite, and we're all on the same team. Next thing he mentions, he says about Kur water and the unity of the hearts. He says, the unity and understanding among the people can be compared to Kur water, the large volume of water. He says, if water is divided by putting it in different vessels, each of them is less than a Kur. Then whenever najasa, impurity, falls into one of them, it makes that water najis. Khalil water, less than Kur, like small water, if najasa falls into it, becomes najis. He said, but if all the water is collected in one place and it becomes more than a Kur, the specified amount for large water, And if najasa falls into that, it doesn't make cur water najis. On the contrary, cur water is capable of purifying things, purifying najasa or a najis object. Exactly in the same way, when people unite together, the rahmah or divine mercy comes down on them and each one benefits by it. He said, secondly, due to the unity amongst the Muslims, they will be held in high esteem by people of different faiths. If people look at us and they see that we are fighting all the time, no one will want to join our ranks. No one will want to convert to Islam. No one will respect us because they say that group, they just are killing each other or fighting amongst each other and they can never get along. But if we are all united, they will respect us. They will see that we are working towards a goal together, even though maybe we have some small differences amongst each other, but we are all united and working together. We'll be held in a greater light with other people. So we have to be like one family of believers. When we are like that, then people will come and they'll say, I feel like I'm part of a bigger thing. I'm part of a family of all of you believe in the same thing. No matter where I go, what city I go to, I can go to a masjid and I will feel that we are all connected. We are all, I don't even need to know them. I can just show up, for example, in Washington, D.C., or Chicago, or Kansas City, Houston, L.A., San Francisco, wherever there's a Shia masjid, anywhere in the country, I can go there and they will welcome me and we'll feel all united because of our belief in the walayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He said, another example is the merits of the Salatul Jama'ah, congregational prayer, and the rewards for that. It's very much recommended to behave kindly toward the believing brother, to help him, to support him. He said, similarly, it is highly recommended or with a lot of reward to visit the believers, to shake their hands, to hug them. These actions carry great benefits. There's a lot of thawab in this. I compiled a lot of narrations in this regard for some other topics before, and then we have tons of narrations about these things, about visiting the believing brothers, about shaking hands. I remember one of them is shaking hands with fellow believer that the sins fall away like the leaves of the trees when the wind is shaking them, the leaves fall down. That is how the sins fall away when we are shaking the hand. Also, for the one who has seen each other recently, it says that we should shake the hand and that the salam is complete with the handshake. And the greeting for the person you haven't seen in a long time is to embrace them, to give them a hug, actually. So all these things are recommended by our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, it's mentioned that to befriend a believer for the sake of Allah carries tremendous rewards. After examining the rewards for all the above actions, one concludes that all such actions have been taught for maintaining the unity amongst the believers. Because when we shake each other's hands, we are close. It's different than saying salam, okay, salam alaikum, and then just go. But you salam alaikum, you shake their hand, you give them a hug. You know, this brings about the closeness of the hearts between the believers. He says, it's known from the next part, he goes on, he says, it's known from some narrations that during a war with the disbelievers, it is permissible to use falsehood if by doing so, victory can be gained over them. So in battlefield, there's exception. Also, the next part is about promise to one's wife. He says a man can give a promise to his wife, even if he does not intend to fulfill it. Disclaimer here, I don't recommend, even though things are halal to do, you can do them. I don't recommend it. So he says a man can give a promise to his wife if he does not intend to fulfill it. A man can give a false promise to fulfill his wife's desire if he thinks that his refusal will cause dispute and discord in the family. So in order to cause, to avoid dispute or discord, he can do this. Inshallah, if she finds she does not find out, because if she does, then there will be discord and dispute. He said, or if it makes his wife extremely unhappy, if he is telling the truth. He said, obviously, such falsehood is also permissible under compelling conditions when a man fears that refusing to a promise may lead to an extreme situation like divorce. However, whether such a promise is permitted or not is difficult to confirm. Such weak traditions do state that a false promise is allowed. So we see narrations are weak. For example, if a wife asks for something, her husband can give her a false promise. It reminds me of a famous saying where you say, ladies, if your husband says he'll do something, he'll do it. There's no need to remind him about it every month. So this is one case. Even if this were allowed, it would be in extreme cases. But I believe one should refrain from this, not just because maybe my wife can hear me from the other room, but because, one should have their relationship built on honesty and mutual understanding, not built on lies and falsehood and false oaths and these type of things. If one needs to lie to the other one, then something may be wrong. And maybe they should consider some marriage counseling if they have to resort to lying to the other person. The next one is he says, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, avoid lying, for when one desires something, he strives for it. And when one fears something, he strives to keep it away from himself. He explains the above narration where it says, if one sincerely desires the pleasure of Allah, one must strive for it. And one of the ways of doing so is refraining from telling lies. Falsehood is a forbidden act that causes displeasure of Allah. In the same way, if one really fears divine retribution, one must keep away from sins, because sins bring punishment. If a person merely claims that he hopes for divine reward or thawab and fears the adab, the punishment of Allah, but he doesn't do any good deeds and he doesn't stop himself from doing haram, then that person is a liar. He's deceiving himself. He's telling lies. He says, I want Jannah, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't pray. He doesn't fast. He doesn't do any good deeds. And he says, I don't want to go to Jahannam. But he's telling you this while he is drinking wine and he is lying and he is doing all the haram things. He says they have a saying in Najab Balaga from Imam Ali alayhi salam says, one who thinks that he hopes in divine rewards, but his actions don't express it, then by Allah, he is a liar. For when he hopes for something, it becomes apparent from his actions. If we want to please Allah and we want to go to Jannah, for example, it should manifest itself in our actions. He says, but if he hopes in Allah and his actions do not show it, in the same way, when one is afraid of something, his actions express this type of fear and he runs away from that thing. For example, I am afraid of bees. So if I see bees, you will see me move very quickly. I will get away from it because I'm afraid of that thing. Some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of, all sort of things. Some people are afraid of their wife. So, when you're afraid of something, you're going to run away from that thing that you're afraid of. So if we say that we're afraid of Allah's punishment, why don't we run away from those things that cause Allah's punishment? Instead, we run towards those things. We say that, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in Allah from shaitan, but then we run towards shaitan. and we embrace shaitan. And anything that has to do with shaitan, we are first to sign up. So when we say something, we need to act on it. If we really believe these things, we need to put them into practice. So if he says, if a person who claims to be fearful of Allah and hopeful of divine rewards, but whose actions do not confirm his claim, is considered a liar. In the same way, a person who claims to have the traits of patience, thankfulness, contentment, which are not shown in his behavior, are also a liar. He said, our speech has to conform to our thoughts. With narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, whenever you say Allahu Akbar, you must consider everything between the earth and the sky to be lesser than Allah. Because when Allah sees that a person says Allahu Akbar only superficially, he says that you, oh liar, you try to be like intelligent with me or smart with me. By my might and honor, I will deprive you of my remembrance. The author says it's regretful that people say with their tongues, Allahu Akbar, but their actions say something else. If you're told to do something, fi sabilillah, for sake of Allah, or to refrain from something for the sake of Allah, they don't care. They don't pay any heed. But if some money was attached to this thing, some sort of fine for disobeying Allah, they will respond right away. For example, you tell them, don't drink alcohol. They will go, they don't care, they go and they drink and drink. But if you say, okay, anyone who is caught outside drinking alcohol, they will be fined $1,000. They're going to stop doing it, or either hide and conceal and do that. But when you say that Allah will punish you for this, they don't put any heed to it. He said, in that case, money has more importance for them than the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people who do certain actions or refrain from those actions only due to fear or of harm by fellow humans. For example, they say, you will be punished for this, we will imprison you for such and such crime. They are afraid of being imprisoned, so they don't do that crime. But if they weren't afraid for that person, and there was no punishment from people for that crime, but the only punishment was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would just probably, if they did not fear Allah, even though they said they do, they maybe go and do that thing. If they are told to do something only for the fear of Allah, he said they won't be impressed by this, unfortunately. A person who says to Allah, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Only you we worship, and only you we ask for help. But his actions are such that day and night he's involved in only seeking money, and he's only preoccupied with trying to fulfill his desires. Can we really consider this person to be truthful? Does this man really worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Everything in life requires a balance, and Allah should never be neglected in order to go pursue worldly things. We have the ayat in Quran about tatrunna hayat ad-dunya. Nay, but they preferred the life of this world, and the hereafter is better and more lasting. And Surah Al-A'la. So sometime it will be time, to make the salah in the time frame, and they chasing money the whole time frame. The time frame is even at the end of the time for them to make the salah, and the chances to make more money, I'll make qada, I'll make it later, I want to go chase the money. They will put monetary things over that, but at the same time they're saying Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. We only worship you. But in this case, it's more like the ayat from Quran and Surah Furqan. That's, I believe, ayat 45. It's in Surah Furqan where it says that, have you seen those who have taken their lower desires for their God? So these people can be like this. And we have to make sure that we don't become like that. And he says, in the same way, many people put his trust and faith in the apparent agencies through which he gets his profit and gain. He regards these as the deciding authorities and seeks their help, overlooking that the fact that these means themselves are through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's grace. All help comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are just the tools. But they look at that thing or that agency as the means of solving their difficulty, not that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, can such a person be true when he says, Wa iyyaka nasta'in? It is only from you we seek help. Allah is the ultimate source of help and sustenance, and others are just the means, tool that Allah uses in that case. One may say that Allah does not use a means or a tool, that He doesn't need to, but we see He doesn't need to, but we see that Allah does use these things, not because He needs to, but because that's the way He set the things to do, to happen. For example, Allah says that He is the giver of life and the giver of death. But who comes to take the soul at death? Malakul Maut, right? Angel of death. But Allah is the ultimate giver and receiver, the giver of life and the giver of death. But He uses angel. Also, when He says that Allah causes things to grow. He could just make them grow from nothing, but Allah uses a process. We have sun, we have rain, we have dirt, we have other components, that go into this thing. So Allah does use a means for things, and due to His own wisdom, He has set things in motion. And we have to remember that the ultimate source of help comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even when Allah has said in Surah Ma'adah, ayat 35, to seek a means, a wasila. So a lot of time when we want to seek a means, we go through the names that all the prophets, the Anbiya, have used to seek help. We use the names of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to get our needs met, or we go to ziyarat and we ask Imam, for example, Imam Hussein or Abu Fadl al-Abbas for their intercession or for their help. But this is because of their maqam, or the status that Allah has given them, and the position Allah has given them in order to meet the needs. But the ultimate help came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the means. I think we've run out of time here, and inshallah we'll pick up on this, finish this chapter next week, inshallah.
Inshallah. 5 minutes.